So you're the founding editor and publisher of Anthos, literary arts journal,
Mm-hmm.
and also a literary radio program,
Mm-hmm.
and
Books as well.
books as
Mm.
well. And would you describe what prompted you to want to launch that into being, and also what made you decide to lay it to rest?
When I left Victoria, which had at that time about 6 internationally bibliographically credible magazines, uh, I estimated because of the relationship with the population that Ottawa would have 36. And when I got here to teach at Carleton, in my first benighted, depressing, bloody year here, I found there was one little stapled magazine at the University of Ottawa called The Wasteland, which was expiring. And I had a letter of introduction to poets like Christopher Levinson at Carleton and that, from poets like Mike Doyle, who Oxford published, established major New Zealand press, saying I was a serious young man and you pay attention and he could highly recommend me and my abilities. And I went around like a proper little literary personality and gave the letter. And Chris Levinson informed me that there's nothing going on in Ottawa. That him and Michael Narosky were thinking of forming a publication and manning a publication. And I said, fine, I'll lick stamps for you, whatever you want. You know, let's make it happen. Put up, shut up attitude. It's going to become catatonic here in a while. You know, so let's do something about it. Let's start a magazine for Ottawa. You know, and it was a kind of whole hum, foot dragging, butt dragging, you know, affair. So I went out and started Review Ottawa, which was a matter of just going to a lot of local businesses and saying, I know you're not a Philistine, you know, I know you're not a materialist schmuck who's against art and spirit and all that stuff, and can you give me a $50 credit card size ad, which I can only mention in print as a patron of a magazine, or I have to start paying taxes on the magazine itself. So would you become a patron of this magazine? And a kind of collecting enough money to be able to pay the printer to get the first issue out, and then hopefully sell that and turn the money back into the Ferals, the literary Ferals. And I did that for years. And it started with Review Ottawa, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they had a REVUE Ottawa come up against it, and there was a confusion of the literary versus the kind of nightlife calendar that Review Ottawa was. So I changed it to Anthos and published it in Ottawa through several issues, and then came up here, and I hadn't been publishing it for years. One day, my girlfriend was holding forth on not making as big a financial contribution to the relationship as I was, you know. And I said, well, I'm an older dude. I've got like more experience than you. It's probable concourse I'm going to be able to shake more apples down from the tree. And with me and you, it's going to be 150% or 150%. None of this. We're not keeping books here. If it's 100% for you, it's 100% for me, and vice versa, you know. And but nevertheless, she went into a little restaurant over here across the street, and mentioned she was starting a magazine. Mentioned we were starting a magazine called Anthos. And then a newspaper reporter came up and asked me who I was. Are you Patrick by the poet? And yes, and he wanted to do a big article on me and everything. And so we did a big article, and in a local paper. And then he was starting a magazine on pig fodder and fertilizer. He's Irish from Liverpool, and I said, wouldn't you rather be part of a literary publication? It seems so much more like you than pig fodder, you know. And he jumped at the chance. And it was really good because he was the assistant editor of the Perth Courier over here, which was edited at that time by Steve Forrester, who also came into this whole cyclical creative process. And so, you know, the symphony was gathering, the music was gathering, it was starting to swirl and stuff. And we got our first issue out and started rolling the ball. And one day I saw computer work, and 2/3 of the price of doing a magazine was typesetting through the more traditional venues. And this saved you the price of typesetting, so I could save 2/3 of the budget for the magazine. So I got a fat Mac and a laser on a rent to lease program with an accountant. Sure, I was going to mess up. He was just like the bullfrog waiting for the fly. He was just going to lick that tongue out of me. He's going to whip it out of me the minute I stepped over the line. And I paid on it for 5.5 years, and I never stepped over the line. And he thought it was one of the miracles of his life that bullfrog never got this fly. And I owned all this stuff. And through that, I met all the people in Apple, right, that we were doing. You know, I had a production manager who was associated with Apple stores and outlets who would come at 3 o'clock in the morning to to get a system up and running so we could meet a deadline without exception. Wonderful devotion and loyalty and honor in the man. So he would ask me in return, would I mind coming down with my laser and my Fat Mac and magazine and showing them at an Apple show what this stuff can do, prima facie evidence of what it can do, you know. And I was down there one day and I was laughing at a poster of, I think it was Jack McClellan and Margaret Atwood and Farley Mowat all sitting behind a little Fat Mac saying, you know, publishing is in our hands now. You know, I was laughing, you know. And this gentleman came up and said, what are you laughing at our glossy, high gloss Jensen high gloss poster for? It cost us thousands of dollars for that image. I said, those are precisely the people why Fat Mac is appealing to me. They've had publishers with Jack McGowan from the beginning. They have no publisher. Margaret Atwood isn't going to go home and typeset her next novel on Fat Mac. She might write it on it, but it's not going to be typeset there. I said, it defeats the whole purpose of a Fat Mac. And he said, what would you do? I said, first of all, you know, as soon as that comes down off the wall, that Jensen high gloss poster that you paid exorbitant amounts through a Shishi arts company overpriced in Toronto, it's going in the garbage at the bottom of the birdcage. Nobody's going to save that. But if you let me put an original poem on it, with an original decoration or elaboration, artistic elaboration, and you want to get inside the education market, I will do poems drawn from the Ottawa board and the various boards, original, serious poems, with original, serious artistic responses to them. And you can put that on Jensen High Gloss and say it was done by Apple. And that will be quality prima facie evidence of what this thing can do, you know. And they started financing a dozen for 3 tiers of the elementary, intermediate, and senior school boards in all over Ontario, you know. And that led on to other ways, and eventually convinced them to go for books, because Reagan had just come out on trying to cover Iran Gate and, you know, Nicaraguan rebels and all of that. Was multiculturalism became the kind of scapegoat, you know, and literacy, you know. So he started banging the drum about that, and has reverberations in Canada. So you know, I said stop taking the multiculturalism divide off stamps and stuff. Some of these people are the most educated and apt to be educated students I've ever had. They know what an education means to them because they're coming from countries that are not always available. You know, we treat ours rather indifferently here, unfortunately, because we assume it's always going to be available. You know, but they started doing that, and then the head of Apple Education, Larry Smith, God bless his soul, stood up and chided and scolded a body of august mandarins from Apple down in Toronto, I hear, to open up the Canada Apple Trust Fund for thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of publishing programs, initiated primarily by me as well. And they sponsored the magazine, not completely. That entire publication was run without a cent of government money. It was all done free enterprise. Poetry lived in the marketplace under its own steam, and it produced a product that could recycle back into that marketplace, honestly, with no crutches, none whatsoever, training wheels on it. And if you told me it could have been done before, I probably would have doubted you. But having done it and seen how it works, it was all there. And then the final analysis ended up spending close to $500,000 on poetry in the Ottawa Valley, sending magazines, reading Ottawa Valley poets on the intercoms in the high schools of Kuwait happened, and getting letters from Kenya saying, I really want to buy a copy of subscription to the magazine, but the Kenyan Postal Service is known for its honesty. And seeing how the envelope's been slashed open and there's no money in it, sending off the subscription anyway. You know, and just getting involved creatively, literarily with Urdu poets, and at one time we published 4 living Nobel Prize winners and 1 candidate for it, Dewana Diababaru from Uruguay, all in the same issue. You know, and I had a juvenile area where poor poets were not adjudicated by the same measure as, say, somebody with 10 books out or something, a really professional poet. So it was poets who were 18 and under, you know, and they could get exposure, but just as serious and cared for quality of publication You know, don't look for bubblegum cards in this one. You know? So it was like that until after years of doing it, and it was gut busting labor. You're just pestered by swarms of black flies of underwhelming details of an exigent reality that you got to run in order to get the money. You know, in order to print it on time, in order to have a printing schedule that met the deadlines of the ads, because this guy just paid $1,500, and for you to come out with the issue a day after his sale, I would be pissed off. You know, so you had all these strictures that were, you know, you have to be here.
Yes.
There's no maybe, there's no theoretical speculation about it, or I'll let it all hang out and don't hang full attitude. You had to be on the spot and precise. And I was for 7.5 years. It kept happening, as well as a lot of other people as well that worked on it, and deserve everybody as much credit in their own way as I did. You know, probably more in a couple of cases. But you know, it was rock and roll all the way. And at the end of that, it burned out everybody's marriage. Everybody separated just because of the exhaustive amounts of energy that went into producing it. And dealing with the psychodynamics of a palpitating amoebic mass of literary psyches at various degrees of meltdown and ascension, 24/7, calling you at 4 o'clock in the morning saying they're about to shoot themselves if you don't tell them which 400 poems of theirs you're going to publish first. You know, shoot yourself, click. You know, because you've had 2 hours sleep and you're trying to write and you're trying to maintain your own well-being by painting incessantly, you know, turning paintings out so that you can pay the rent and the gas and all of that stuff. You're not a freeloader as well, you know, because most of the money went back into the projects. You couldn't live on it.
Are those journals still accessible?
Oh yeah, I've got a catalog of them up here. I use it to keep the dust out of my laser printer here, you know.
Are they archived in any libraries?
Oh, I'm sure they have ISBN numbers and that, and they've gone through different. Here, you can look at this. This was all done on a fat mat. Pen and ink added stuff like this. See if I have copy. This is also one of the ways it came out. This is down in Ottawa, so it had the more all these writers and that. It had the more traditional sort of look as well. And there's various other issues that are modified somewhat.
Can people still purchase these?
Oh, somewhere in special collections. I just find out from this gentleman that homage to Victor Horror is going for $95. You know, so I imagine you can ferret them out somewhere from some magic Wizard of Oz bibliophile, or just stumble across them. You know, you might. There you go. There we go. My big black tome. It's the scripture. Hey, it's the hidden Gnostic gospel. It's the black gospel.
Oh,
Yeah, it's real.
okay, go.
Just as I'm saying, my black scripture. The hidden enam of Gnostic gospels.
Okay, let's see the Ethos title. This one is,
Anthos.
Anthos, yeah.
The,
It's a Greek word for
the
flower.
tattoos and tofu issue.
Yeah, yeah. What, you didn't think Serious Magazine? It's a very serious magazine, very profound, very beautiful in its own right.
So how many issues are consolidated in these?
Well, this is a
This
sampling.
bound.
It's not a complete compendium of all we published. We first came out because that's all we could afford on newsprint.
And then there was another magazine that you were looking
Yeah, this is #2 book print, so it doesn't have the acids don't chew it up, and it ensures a longevity for Apple as well, which I astutely pointed out to them. That these ads like that are still here, and it's what 15, 20 years later, because people won't destroy it because of the sacrosanctity of the artistic expression in it.
There was
So
another
it's-
magazine also, a smaller one, that you were looking at, wasn't there? No?
There is, yes, there's this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Could you hand that? to
Yeah,
us?
and that was Anthos as well. But the marketplace at that time suited a more traditional literary format. But I wanted a larger audience, and I didn't want this kind of literary tome scaring off people who trusted their eyes more than they did their minds, unfortunately.
Could you hand
Is any of your poetry
Oh, yeah.
in there?
Oh yeah, no, I had never felt guilty about it. I'm doing all this work on behalf of thousands of writers.
Yes.
And it's taking up the time I would otherwise be sending my work off to magazines as well as the money to
hand
do
it
it.
over?
So I put half a dozen poems in a big issue like that or something and feel completely conscious clear about it as I still do. You know.